Welcome back to Tort Talk. I'm your host, Marc Rioux, joined, as always, by Jon Robinson and Joe, the Oracle Fantini. This summer is not cooling down, and we have an exciting episode for you today covering the Covidien Hernia Mesh trial, Hair Relaxer MDL, social media addiction, and an update with Bard PowerPort. Let's get into it. Thank you both for being here.
Before we get into this episode of the podcast, I just wanted to say this. In an industry filled with roll-ups and depersonalization, we're setting the new standard for legal marketing. We built RR Digital to be founder-led and independent. There is no private equity steering this ship. We're talking about a real partnership with your firm with real transparency and real results. From case acquisition to full digital strategy, we handle it all. Visit rrdigitalmedia.com for more information. The Hernia Mesh MDL has been going on for years and years and years, and we are at the tail end of all of those trials against the various manufacturers. Last week, the Covidien trial kicked off. Joe, what can we expect? What has happened so far? What can you tell us about Covidien?
Yeah, so in Covidien overall, we have the MDL and the Massachusetts State Court action going on. Over 10,000 cases combined between the two. This is the first Bellwether trial in either litigations. It's going on in the MDL, and we heard from both sides their opening statements last week. And basically, what this case comes down to is it's a case involving Symbotex mesh that was implanted in the plaintiffs, and plaintiff's theory is the coating on the mesh was improper and defectively designed. And because of that, the plaintiff then developed issues with his bowel, requiring an additional surgery. On the other side, Covidien's arguing that there was no problem with the mesh. The plaintiff had an initial surgery, which put him at an increased likelihood of developing a hernia recurrence, which is exactly what happened in this case. And he just suffered a hernia recurrence leading to the complications, no issue with the mesh. So we've gotten that overall theory and a pretty broad picture from each side. Now we're going to hear from the witnesses, the plaintiff, some of the providers, and then we'll get into the battle of the experts coming up, likely this week and next week. It's expected that the trial is going to last somewhere between 3 to 4 weeks. We'll probably have a decision in that first week of August, which is going to have a huge impact on all of these other 10,000 cases pending.
Very different from other hernia mesh brands where they were looking at either organ perforation or other issues with the actual mesh itself. It's interesting. Like, you're talking about the coating. Is this the only manufacturer that had apparently issues with the coating? Or is there any sort of precedent that Kelsey Stokes and David Hobbs can use in this trial?
Yeah, so the coating on the mesh is definitely an issue that we've seen in all of these other products. Basically, there's a number of different ways that the defendants can do it and have done it over the years with other products. So when this foreign product, like a hernia mesh, is implanted with you, it causes this inflammatory response. And that was known and understood. So it's really important how the mesh was coated, because then it could attach to your organs. It could cause adhesions. In this instance, it caused problems with the bowel, which then necessitated the need for subsequent surgery. So it was the defendant's choice of whether to coat this with a collagen, or a lot of times we've seen dipped in fish oil, even in the atrium C-cure cases, which cause problems. So it's a known issue. And in this one, we're saying, again, the defendants didn't use and didn't make the right choice, and ultimately didn't warn the plaintiff that this could happen. And it's a failure to warn design defect trial.
All right, moving on to the next one, the darling of the power rankings, Hair Relaxer. As we inch closer to 12,000 cases filed in the MDL, what are the key deadlines for the rest of 2026, Joe?
Yeah, we're making some good progress in the Hair Relaxer MDL. Like you said, we're almost at 12,000 cases now. I think we'll get above 13,000 before the end of the year. We're seeing about 300 cases filed per month still. So that's letting you know that there's new cases out there. Really, the date that everybody's focusing on right now is this November 16th deadline for these case-specific motion for summary judgments and Daubert motions. So that's going to be really important in determining what's going to happen in these Bellwether cases. The initial Bellwether cases are scheduled to begin in the late spring of 2027. So we're still 6-9 months out from that. So I think we'll see, another 2,000 cases filed in this litigation, getting us up to probably 15,000 total before a case ultimately goes to trial. I guess what really is going to depend in this case is which of these three injuries are going to be determined to be viable. Is it going to be ovarian, uterine, and endometrial cancer, or is one going to get kicked out? That's really the only thing we're waiting on, but these cases are looking good. It's taking a long time to get to that initial trial compared to the Depo-Provera rocket docket that settled out. So I don't think we have a global settlement this year, but the pressure's definitely there. And hopefully in 2027, we have some good news.
The second social media addiction trial is coming up very shortly in August. And right before, now we have demands from the states of California, Colorado, Kentucky, New Jersey in a cumulative amount of 1.4 trillion, which is approximately, I don't know, coincidentally, very close to the market capitalization of Meta at the time they made the demand. How has this demand and that specifically that number that they are demanding been received by both the defendants and the court as we are just weeks away from that second social media addiction trial, Joe?
Yeah, I don't think it's been well received by Meta in response to that $1.4 trillion demand that you mentioned there. Meta came back with a few $1,000,000 response.
Just a little bit off.
Yeah, just a little bit of a difference there to, get that gap closed. But the judge pretty much came back and said both sides were being outlandish in their positions. So it seems like the 1.4 trillion is too much of a reach. Like you said, the market cap of Meta, I think, was 1.6 trillion. So we were leaving them with 200 billion. And I think they probably make more than $5 million a day. So that probably was insufficient as well. But with that huge of a gap, a month away from trial, it's hard to see that gap being closed to get to some sort of resolution. I'm sure there's going to be some negotiations going on, but this trial is 1 month out, where this is the biggest number I've ever seen, more than $1.4 trillion separating the parties. So it looks like this is going to trial right now. We'll see what happens in the meantime, but a lot of motion practice ongoing, a lot of arguments about exhibits, experts, things of that nature. So the parties are doing a lot of work, but that gap is definitely pretty big.
Yep, and maybe the states are anchoring really high, so they have a lot of negotiating room.
Maybe 0.4 trillion is still a pretty big number in my head, but we'll see what happens. It just shows how severe these cases are, right? How many impacted individuals there are. When you come out with that sort of number, it shows, these are serious cases that demand attention, which finally the pressure's certainly on.
This trial that's coming up in August, is that the trial that these states are a part of, or is this another Bellwether trial from the California social media addiction lawsuits? Is this an MDL Bellwether? Can you help our audience understand? Because there's a variety of different lawsuits against the social media companies at the moment.
Yeah, so we have an individual plaintiff trial scheduled to begin in state court. That's the next one to go. This one that we're talking about, the 1.4 trillion involving the states, that's in the MDL. That's scheduled towards the end of August. So like we talk about always on here, this multi-prong attack is really what's hitting them. We have some school districts, we have the AGs, we have the individual plaintiffs. So next week, I'm sure we'll be giving an update on that next individual plaintiff trial that's supposed to begin at the end of July, where we already had a couple defendants settle out. No settlements reached yet in this AG action with that 1.4 trillion demand.
It is possible these two trials could collide. If the July trial continues on for about a month, we'll see the start of the AG trial.
Yeah, it's definitely, putting a stress on the resources of the defendants, but also some of the plaintiffs' attorneys are, certainly involved in both actions. So it's certainly something to watch.
All right, moving on to our last update of the day, Bard PowerPort, 1 month out from the next Bellwether trial. What are you hearing about this case, Joe?
Yeah, so we're getting closer to the second Bellwether trial. Everybody remembers we had the first case, a verdict for the defendants. There was supposed to be the second Bellwether trial going on right about now, but the plaintiff unfortunately passed away. The family decided not to proceed. So then that put the third case up. This is going to be on a different theory, kind of going forward. Plaintiffs are hoping for a better result. I think what's really important in this PowerPort litigation is to know after this trial starting in August, we have another trial scheduled to begin in October and then another one in December. So I don't think we'll get some sort of global resolution, even with the plaintiff win in this next Bellwether trial. But I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get 3 verdicts before the end of 2026, hopefully put a lot of pressure on the defendants for these, 3,800 cases that are pending in the MDL right now.
Yeah, let's get some momentum.
We'll keep everybody updated as we get closer to that trial in Bard PowerPort. Also, keep an eye out on those social media addiction ones as we move forward. But those are ones definitely to watch as we bring this summer to the end.
Summer to an end. It's just July. We got August.
Yeah.
We're like midway through. All right. Thanks, Joe. We will see everyone next week.